Is this 2-week period broken up, or is it continuous? Could it be that something is being cooked up behind the scenes, and Israel is being kept out of that room even though it was invited? From the beginning it was, let's attack and clean up, but now it's like they're pushing us out. That's how it feels here. That's what the people understand. There are a lot of people here with confused and divided thoughts in Israel, but the vast majority agree on one thing, that if this whole month and a half ends this way, it wasn't worth it at all. And someone summed it up by saying what we did was just mow the lawn, because in reality the grass grows back since we didn't pull out the root. But if we were to ask, what does the Bible say about this? Isn't there something specific that talks about this particular time? At least not in this conflict, because this is more of a regional conflict. It's not Ezekiel 38, it's not Ezekiel 39, it's not Jeremiah 49, it's not the War of Armageddon, it's not the coming of the Messiah or the rapture of the church, it's not the immediate construction of the temple, it's not that time. But yes, everything is leading us to that time.
It's just another piece of the puzzle.
Exactly. Everything leads us to that time, but there are stories in the Bible that would allow us to learn from them how to act in the moment. The actual one we're in.
But it doesn't mean that we're using that guidance we have from the Bible. I mean, not us, the leaders.
Exactly. It's not that they use it.
Exactly. But it really is there. There are examples where it could be used as a guideline, right? Yes.
Because if it were used, things would be completely different. So let's go over a bit of history. Many years ago, in this city of Jerusalem, where we are now, to be precise, about 2,700 years ago, there was a king here in this city of Jerusalem. That king's name was Hezekiah. The Bible tells us that at that time, Jerusalem was the capital of the territory of Judea. And Israel had its capital in Samaria.
Israel was the northern kingdom.
It was from the north. Its capital was Samaria, Judah.
It was from the south.
The king was Hezekiah. Do you remember the name of the king of Israel at that time? Homus. Was it something like that? I mean, what was his name?
Okay, I'll find it soon. Go on, I'll look for it, okay?
There was a king in Israel in the northern kingdom. I mean, a king? Was it Hosea?
Hosea.
Okay, Hosea was the king of Israel in the north. And Hezekiah was the king of Judah. With its capital in the city of Jerusalem. This was after the period when Israel was divided in two, after David and Solomon.
David and Solomon.
After that came Rehoboam, and then Jeroboam, that whole part of the story. Then different kings come.
From there, the story splits into parallel lines, and they continue in parallel. So whenever you read in the Bible that it says, because Hosea was in Israel, and it tells you who was in the other kingdom, and what year it is. So you can see that everything happens in parallel.
Exactly. Let's also always remember that those who were in the territory of Judah, the kings came from the lineage of David.
Okay.
They were all from David's royal line, those who remained from the line of David. And those from Israel were from the different tribes. They were already appointing different kings. But well, the truth is that this is it's very broad.
Very broad.
Just to have some background, that's all. A small summary. The Bible tells us about Ezekiel.
Hezekiah.
Hezekiah was young when he became king. He was 25 years old. It says he reigned for 29 years. And while he was reigning, in parallel, as we said, something was happening with Hoshea in Israel. Specifically in Israel's capital, Samaria. A king had come from what is today part of Syria. What was Persia? The Bible doesn't call it Persia. It calls him the king of... Where does it say he came from? Assyria.
Thank you.
Because it was an entire region. It was the entire region of Assyria. It was big. but its capital specifically was Persia. And Persia was the part. Today it's part of Iran. Not all of Iran is Persia, just a part, okay? Up to that point, are we good? In short, there was a king. Who was the Assyrian king? Not the one almost everyone knows. There was another one. The one who was succeeded by someone named Samari. Samasis?
If I'm not mistaken. You'll read it there.
Wait, I had it on the tip of my tongue and it slipped away. He had so many names. Yes.
A lot of names. You'll read it there. It's at the beginning, a king, and then it says that he goes and conquers Israel. And then what he does is he takes all the people of Israel, that is the city of Samaria. He besieges it. He keeps it under siege for 3 years, and then he ends up conquering it. And that's where the kingdoms of Israel, that is the 10 tribes of Israel,
So
they are expelled. That's what starts the exile, and they are taken away
They are taken away too.
to Assyria, okay?
The king was Shalmaneser.
Shalmaneser, I was close. After this king, another king succeeds him, named Sennacherib. That is, years went by. Sennacherib comes, and Sennacherib also was a conqueror. Then he decides to conquer what was there, or what was left to conquer in this whole region, up to the territory of Egypt. And to reach the territory of Egypt, he needed to conquer this place. Remember that there was a good relationship between Egypt and the territory of Judah, because there was a period of time when Judah had become a province. There was a king of the territory of Judah who had even been ruled by Egypt. There was a relationship. At that time, it was necessary to weaken this area in order to conquer Egypt, and that's when Sennacherib comes. He goes to a city in the southern region of Israel called Lachish. And it says that from there, he begins to threaten the king who was right here where we are sitting on these benches in the city of Jerusalem. Hezekiah was somewhere around here. His whole entourage and all his people were with him. And they hear that he came to besiege them. Same thing, they use the same system in the north, just besieging them. We surrounded them in the city, cutting off their food supply.
Without food, so that no one, besides when a city is under siege, all the gates are automatically closed. No one can enter and no one can leave. That means the merchants who come from outside can't get in, and people can't leave either. Exactly. They can't go out to the fields for anything.
Okay, now, as an aside, today, a few days ago, about a month and a half ago, we placed an order on Amazon.
See.
Like that, and it hasn't arrived.
It still hasn't arrived like that.
In fact, if you want to place an order today, it tells you, unfortunately, due to the conflict in a high-risk region, we can't ship. So we're kind of under siege. Yes, because people can't come either
Now,
to go sightseeing openly. They can't come to walk around, visit, or get off a plane. Now, as of today, maybe. In the next few days, yes. But as of today, when we're making this video, not so much.
it's like we were isolated.
Exactly.
If you check the flight paths, it was the same. No planes were coming or going, showing they were isolated.
In fact, the Israelis themselves, during this Passover, couldn't leave the country for vacation like they do every holiday. They usually leave by the millions, but this time they had to stay in their own country, vacationing at home, so we were under siege.
Exactly, so to speak. Yes.
Just like 2,700 years ago, as the Bible tells us, okay? So Israel has already experienced this before, and they experienced it exactly with the same region.
With the same region, the same way of thinking.
The same as back then. We're going to lay siege to them, and the strategy for laying siege was to weaken the economy. Today, the same thing is happening, weakening Israel's economy. So what had happened? The briefest summary was that he had arrived. The king had told his team, there are some very strange names there among all these people, but there is one with the name Am. I don't remember. I remember there. You'll see it later. Who was the king's spokesperson?
Ram, Tartan, Rabsaris, and Rabshakeh. This one,
Rabshakeh, who was the spokesperson, and the Bible even reminds us that he had blasphemed the name of God because he said, well, as often happens today, right? God told me.
this one,
God told me this. And you know what? The interesting thing is that God listens. So you have to be very careful when you say God tells me, because God listens. And he says that God told him, this one blasphemed. I mean, he should be considered among those God says aren't blaspheming.
He said at one point, God told me blah, 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 blah. And then God says that this one blasphemed.
Yes, but why? Because that one somehow. Now let's remember the story, but this Hezekiah kind of let himself get confused.
Yes, he listened to his voice instead of listening to God's voice.
So what had happened? It turns out that here Hezekiah obviously didn't want his people to fall into the same, how do you say it? Into the same future, into the same situation that happened to his neighbor, Samaria.
To the people of Judah, yes.
He just wanted to protect his people.
The people of Israel.
Trying to do what was right. Like everything, he started taking steps, making legal moves.
Yes, in his own thinking, in his own strength.
And then he started saying, let's find a quick, easy solution to all this conflict. Let's get this out of the way. So ask this Sennacherib what he wants. And then Rabshakeh says, okay, Sennacherib wants this. Let's make a deal. Let's make a peace agreement. For 14 days, let's make a deal, he says. Bring me silver and gold. Yes? And that's it. And then Hezekiah, I can't believe it. Of course, he thought he could trust these people. And he says he took all the gold from the temple. He took all the money. Remember, the temple's gold belonged to the people.
Exactly, that they had donated.
That they brought the tithes. They brought the offerings. So this guy takes all the people's money and says, let's silence the enemy.
Then he gives the money to the enemy.
What happens when he gives the money to the enemy?
Wait, let's read it, okay? What you're saying about this agreement, it's in 2 Kings 18, thank you. 2:14 divided by half of 14, and it says, the king of Assyria imposed on Hezekiah, king of Judah, 300 talents of silver and 30 talents of gold. Therefore, Hezekiah gave all the silver that was found in the house of the Lord and in the treasures of the royal house. Then Hezekiah removed the gold from the doors of the temple of the Lord and from the doorposts that he himself, King Hezekiah, had covered with gold. And he gave it to the king of Assyria.
And what happened to the king of Assyria?
And then here it says, then the king of Assyria sent against King Hezekiah the Tartan, the Rabsaris, the Rabshakeh, and the Rabshakeh with a great army from Lachish against Jerusalem, etc., etc.
In other words, the agreement wasn't honored.
He didn't honor it or keep it.
It wasn't just, thanks for the money, I'm leaving so you can live in peace in your city, keep prospering, plant your vineyard, and all the rest. But he said he wasn't satisfied and wanted hostages instead. Don't you think we're repeating the same chapter from 2,000 years ago? He said, I want hostages. Nowadays, what is Iran saying? I want compensation for what you just did to me. What's more, I want to keep producing uranium. What's more, I want to keep doing this and this and this and this and this. I want to stay in power, in other words. And what's happening now is that Israel is not alone in the negotiation. And then another interesting player appears who negotiates directly with the enemy, and Israel is left out of the picture. The blame isn't on the one who helps you, but on him. One who occasionally accepts help. What did you want to say?
No, I wanted to tell you that, no, it's not relevant anymore. It's not important because you're right. This is more important. Maybe now there's no need to look for whose fault it was and whose fault it wasn't. And well, we need to ask ourselves what would have happened if we had done this or if we had done that in order to exactly recalculate and to be able to see where we made a mistake so we don't make the same mistake again. But anyway, it's already done.
Yes, we have to make a sharp turn and go back to the scriptures, definitely. Because look, this story continues as follows. It tells us that Hezekiah gets somewhat sad because it's like his plan to reach an agreement didn't work. I made an agreement with people who don't keep their word. This agreement, this process didn't work. And then that person comes and attacks me. Not only is he attacking me, he's also asking me for hostages. Not only is he asking me for hostages, but he's also asking me, he gives me, because he also gives me. He says he's gonna give him horses, but he's also saying, give me the horsemen. So Israel had to give him hostages and horsemen.
Nahon, so what? Who was staying in the country? And ultimately,
Them, I mean,
they didn't have money, they didn't have people because he had taken hostages. And also, if he gives him horsemen, what does that mean? They're soldiers because the ones who rode back then were the men, the soldiers.
now look at the cunning of the king through this spokesman he had, who says to him, do you still trust Egypt? And is he the one I trust in today? Right down there who Israel trusts in today, right? Because Israel at that time, no, not Israel, sorry, Judah, at that time trusted in Egypt. Because it was, and he says to him that Egypt you trust in is like a reed, he says, right? That ends up breaking.
You lean your hand on it, your hand gets pierced, yes, you hurt yourself.
Exactly, so in the end, don't trust Egypt. And Sennacherib is saying all this to Ezekiel. And what's more, that's where Rabshakeh uses this and says, Jehovah sent me, your God is the one who sent me. The one you sent to clean everything and then said again, to worship this God here, that's the one who's sending me, telling me, do this. And so here he gets confused. Of course, because how can that be possible?
God is speaking to you.
Look at the neighbor we have here.
It's confusing because in the end, God speaking to my enemy is one thing.
Exactly, and that's when he finally sends. He finally does something wise and stops. He goes to the room. And there, where he could consult God, that's when he repents. And when he repents, he asks for forgiveness. He changes into sackcloth. When it says sackcloth, it represents complete repentance. And also, remember that when he was talking about this Rabshakeh, he was speaking in a language that people didn't understand. And then King Hezekiah's leaders tell him, don't speak in that language, because people understand it. Speak to us in another language. And he says no, and stands in a higher place. And he starts speaking louder so that all the people can hear, saying, your king is deceiving you, as if trying to turn the people against the king. And the people did not turn against him.
No, even though it was so tense. The thing is, the people did what was said. Hezekiah had asked them, do not answer him a word. And the people. I'm not sure if they were afraid, but they stayed silent and did as they were told with their part.
Finally, Hezekiah repents, asks the Lord for forgiveness, and then comes the word of the prophet Isaiah, who says, go and tell Hezekiah the following. And then he ends up telling him, as we remember, we have it there, among so many things he says to him.
Here it says, look, verse 19, 20, then Isaiah, well, 19, 19, 19. Now then, Jehovah, our God, save us, I beg you, from his hand, so that all the kingdoms of the earth may know that you alone, Jehovah, are God. Then Isaiah, son of Amoz, sent word to Hezekiah, saying, this is what Jehovah, God of Israel, has said. What you asked me about Sennacherib, king of Assyria, I have heard. This is the word that Jehovah has spoken concerning him. The virgin daughter of Zion despises you, she mocks you. Behind you, she shakes her head, and so on. Yes.
To say everything that starts to be said there, and finally he ends up saying he will not enter, which is where Isaiah stands on that wall and says he will not enter this place. Do not be afraid. So he will not penetrate the city of Jerusalem, and the same way he came is the way he will leave. And then it says that when Rabshakeh returns to where Sennacherib was, who should have been in Lachish, he is no longer there, but is in another place. Why? Because he had gone to fight, because Sennacherib had heard that the king of Ethiopia was coming to fight against him. And then he got ready for battle. And then Rabshakeh goes back again to Hezekiah, telling him a bunch of other things. He says, listen to me, I don't know what. But Hezekiah already had word from Isaiah saying that they are not going to enter. And that's where Hezekiah later on in the book of Chronicles starts with the plan, not of evacuation, but the plan of action.
Of action.
Where he starts to say, let's divert the water.
Exactly.
That's something wonderful we started doing.
Yes.
The plan to, how do you say it, manage the money well, right? And God ends up telling him, through Isaiah, something very interesting, that even after giving away all of God's money, God tells him, don't worry, because the first year it's not going to yes.
The second year either. And in the third year, you'll be able to plant. Don't worry.
That year, you will finally eat what you planted. You will receive them.
But in the previous years, the first 2 years, they wouldn't go without food because they would eat from what was theirs, from what the land would give them.
Yes.
That's something amazing because actually when a war ended back then, everything was destroyed. Ultimately,
What God is telling them is don't panic, don't get nervous. I am the provider, you won't lack anything to eat. As the Bible says, it's always very clear. It says there won't be a beggar who lacks bread, right? I have not seen the righteous forsaken, nor his children begging for bread. I can't recall the exact words, but that's the idea, right? Well, in the end, the God of Israel, look, is so perfect in everything that he ends up saying all of that, right? And so what ends up happening to Sennacherib is really sad.
exactly.
But he deserved it for trying to mess with God's people.
Let's read it. Yes, let's read it. It's right there in 2 Kings chapter 19, verses 36 and 37, which says, Then Sennacherib, king of Assyria, left and returned to Nineveh, where he stayed. That is, while he was worshipping in the temple of Nisroch, his god, Adramelech and Sharezer, his sons, struck him down with the sword and escaped to the land of Ararat. And Esarhaddon, his son, reigned in his place. In other words, his sons, Sharezer and Adramelech, struck him down with the sword and escaped to the land of Ararat. And Esarhaddon, his son, reigned in his place. That is to say, his sons.
They themselves killed their own father. Their own father. Exactly, they took his place. But look, what's also interesting about this, which brings us to today, is that the same branch of the same tree remained.
Yes, it wasn't completely eliminated, right? Nah, John, that root still remained.
To this day.
Today, yes.
To this day, it's still exactly the same. But what was the solution back then? Which lasted for many years, because it was for many years. In fact, a lot of Jews stayed living there. Later, because the Bible tells us that Nebuchadnezzar comes later, he ends up taking Jerusalem. Many Jews stayed living there, and they made that territory their home.
Exactly. They had already adapted, they had learned the language, maybe they had even gotten married.
That's why many Jews live there.
In Iran.
Exactly, in the territory of Persia. Many Jews who live in Iraq and that whole area who continue to live in that place.
Because their whole family, their generation already lived there. Because back then, it was possible. There was a time of peace. Exactly.
God had brought about a time of great peace. Not like that temporary one. In other words, that temporary peace that Hezekiah tried to make, maybe or maybe not, is like the temporary peace that's being attempted in our days.
Hezekiah's? No.
Hezekiah, the deal Hezekiah tried to make when he said, I'll give you gold and silver, and told him,
Go away, leave me in peace.
yes,
That agreement.
that agreement didn't work.
That way of solving it. Exactly.
Hiding it under the rug didn't work. But the only solution is with divine intervention. So Israel has to understand that Egypt is not going to help them. Title it, Who is Egypt?
Who is Egypt?
Call it France, call it England, call it the United States, call it whatever you want. Help does not come from Egypt. Help comes from the God of Israel. So that's when the government and the people of Israel will at some point look up, and Zechariah reminds us, and they will see the one they pierced and mourn for him deeply. So that time hasn't come yet. That time hasn't come yet. But everything we're experiencing is leading us to those inevitable, yet at the same time comforting days.
Why comforting?
We're going to be reunited with the one who paid the price.
I mean,
He will come for those who believe in him, so we must continue to have peace. And just as he acted in the past, he also continues to act in the present. Thank you.
Yes, that's right, Edu. Sometimes we are, because I imagine that Hezekiah must have been a little confused because he hadn't asked the Lord, or maybe because he had drifted away a little. He must have obviously been a little confused about what he had to do. That's why he made the mistakes he made. But the most important thing is not only that he truly repented from his heart, but also that God listened to him. It's not that God said, get out of here because you disobeyed me. God listened to him. And we're talking about the very moment when the city was under siege. I mean, he was between a rock and a hard place. And that's when he realized that he had to turn back to God. So that also applies to us personally, not just to the country.
No. Salvation is individual. We all have to return and trust in him and be alone with him. Our trust is in him, and together it's over.
It's not wrong for other people to support us and help us, but the focus of our faith and trust has to be on the Lord. So God can use other people. I'm not saying he can't. But as long as our focus is first on God, en Dios.